All right, first up is Tracy Hadden Loh, who's the research director at the Rails-to-Trails Conservancy. She is a PhD in city planning from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She represents Washington, D.C. on the Citizens Advisory Committee of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Transportation Planning Board and is a community activist focused on youth development and local democratic reform. Welcome, Tracy.
Thanks, Deb.
So I've got the same question for each of the panelists on the first round, and they've promised me that they're going to be short in their answers so that we can have a lot of discussion. The first question is, Tracy, tell me, what do you do? Why does walking matter to the equity sector? Because you're here representing equity today. And what happened at the roundtable discussion yesterday? What were the key takeaways associated with equity?
Thanks, Deb. I'm a scientist. I do research. I'm also an activist. I agitate for change, and I don't accept the status quo. And I think maybe I have some friends out there in the audience today who feel the same way. I'm also a survivor, which a surprising number of people at the Equity Roundtable yesterday were. I've survived a collision with an automobile while I was just inhabiting my body. And the key takeaway from our roundtable, not to agitate right away, is that equity is not a sector. Equity should be woven into everything that everybody here is doing. We need to put people of all ages and all abilities at the center of everything that we're doing to build a movement for walking. It's not an add-on, it's not a separate thing. It's the center of what we're trying to achieve.
All right, thank you. And through the applause, you can hear that they agree. All right. Representing the funders is Todd Vogel, who's the managing director of the Loom Foundation. He's a former journalist and academician, and he now works in the Seattle-based Loom Foundation and also does grant making with social venture partners. Todd has authored and edited articles on books on race, class, culture, and the environment, which is also a focus of his area of grant making. So Todd, I have the same question for you. Why does walking matter to funders? Why does it matter to you? And what happened yesterday?
The Loom Foundation funds at the intersection of the environment and social equity. And I think that it works for us as it does for a large number of other funders. We see it as an indicator of opportunity. If we might have parks or transportation hubs in a neighborhood, but if people can't walk from their home to those locations, it doesn't do them a lot of good. So that's one of the reasons we care so much about walking at Loom. In terms of the challenges that we face, we felt like as funders, we talked yesterday about the need to build the public will and the need for funders to fund the capacity of organizations to do that grassroots organizing. It's not something that a lot of funders do to fund capacity, but it's necessary and important. And then the second important piece is to see these changes through the eyes of the people on the ground and to think about change through the eyes of people that you want to encourage to do more walking. Thank you.
Yeah, how much did you hear? About zero?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and give us the 30-second version?
Okay, the 30-second version is that Loom funds the intersection of the environment and social equity. We see walking as an indicator of opportunity. If people have parks or transit hubs in their neighborhood but don't feel safe walking there or can't walk there safely, then it does them little good. The two takeaways from yesterday are that we need to fund capacity of grassroots organizing, do capacity development on the ground. And that's a heavy lift for a lot of funders. They don't fund capacity often. And then the second item is that when we think about how we're doing that funding, we need to see it through the eyes of the individuals on the ground. Not think about it as an infrastructure project or some broad grand policy, but how do we create an invitation for people to step into the act of walking?
Great, thank you. Definitely worth repeating. All right, great. Next up, representing the elected officials is Christy Weir, who has been on the City Council in Ventura for 10 years. She was mayor also, and during her term as mayor, she led the city's walkability initiatives, including creating a downtown business improvement district to improve the pedestrian experience through enhanced cleanliness and safety. And she added a requirement for new housing developments to include 6-foot sidewalks and 5-foot planting strips with canopy trees. Wow, if we could get that to happen in every city across America, that would certainly change the walkability. So Christy, welcome, and let us know your answer to the question about why is walking important to you, to elected officials, and what happened yesterday?
Well, I have to say, first of all, I'm really glad to know that the Grim Reaper is walking slower than my dad. My dad is 99 years old and is completely self-sufficient, taking care of his house and his 25 fruit trees. And every time I go grocery shopping with me, he's walking ahead of me in the grocery store. I can't keep up with him. So I think there's some truth about walking fast your entire life. As a city representative here, I just want to say that city leaders, we're the ones that build the sidewalks, that keep the sidewalks clean, that put in the stoplights, all the pedestrian amenities, and we need to hear from our citizens. The only power we have comes from the grassroots up. We can't inflict walkability on people, even though we would like to. But it has to come from the people, and we are here to listen and then to enact policies. And as far as leadership is concerned, we need, I think, to be an example. And the more that our leaders can be an example at the grassroots level, cities, counties, states, and federal, the more people will follow that example. And I'm really happy to be here because I do feel like this is a tribe, and we, as a group, can impact the health of this entire country. Thank you.
That's great. We talked yesterday about how International Walk to School Day is next Wednesday, October 9th, and we encouraged all the elected officials to get out there and walk to school. And you can kind of see the connection here. If funders are funding more capacity building, then they're reaching up to elected officials that are then hearing what's important to the citizens, the way they appropriate funds through planning and public works and law enforcement. So that's great. So Vanessa this morning talked about we have work to do, and last night we were notified that the person who was going to represent our developer roundtable was not able to make it this morning. So Tyler and I were emailing Geoff Anderson in the middle of the night, asking Geoff if he could come and be on the stage this morning. And at 2:30 in the morning, his dog started barking and woke him up. I think it was translation of, Geoff, you have work to do. He got up and turned on his computer and saw that we were asking him to be here this morning at 7:40 to get mic'd up and be on the main stage. And he answered with, amen, I will be there. So Geoff Anderson is here. This is the kind of leadership that we need, that we know is going to make a movement. Geoff is president and CEO of Smart Growth America, and he's been there for 6 years. And he served at the EPA for 13 years, where he helped to found the EPA's Smart Growth Program and ran it for 8 years. In fact, we met there back in the year 2000 when I was promoting Walk to School Day and Safe Routes to School. So one of his first actions as CEO of Smart Growth America was to call Chris Lineberger to start Locus within Smart Growth America, and Locus is responsible for real estate developers dedicated to building walkable communities and smart growth communities. So Geoff, what about the developers? Why does this matter, and what happened yesterday?
Actually, I think my dog was really saying, like, you didn't hit your walking target, so we've got to take a 2:30 circumambulation of the block. So I think that challenge yesterday, Tyler, my dog made sure I got there. So the theme yesterday at our roundtable, of course, was money. Developers are about making money. We have the privilege of working with a number of developers who actually care about money plus other things, a triple bottom line of the social equity of the environment side. But they've got to make money. There's got to be a market for what they're doing. And, and we should all want that, right? We should want the people who are delivering the triple bottom line to make the most money. because that will reinforce itself and reproduce itself over and over. Some of the themes that came out of that were, that this is where the market is going. We had some folks who are responsible for corporate real estate leasing. They said all their retail clients are saying we want walkable communities, we want to locate in those places. The millennials, the baby boomers are forming an enormous market share going towards walkable places. And there are some barriers that we'll get into that make it difficult. Some of the other themes that came up were just the fact that it gets very expensive. All this demand means that in a market economy, people bid the price up. And so when that gets very expensive and you have new developments coming in, there's obviously a gentrification set of issues that you have to address. Folks like Forest City, who is part of Locus, just voluntarily and have it as their corporate policy to always include 20% of their units as affordable housing, and that's at 50% AMI. So there are things that can happen that the market can support that we can do to address some of those issues, but those were some of the themes.
Great, thank you, Geoff. All right, next up, representing business leaders, we have Karen Marlo, who's the Vice President of Benchmarking and Analysis at the National Business Group on Health, which she joined in July of 2007. And also really importantly, she is the PTA Safe Routes to School representative for her son's elementary school in Vienna, Virginia, and we had a great conversation about that yesterday, so welcome.
Thank you. I couldn't pass up the opportunity when you have the director of the Safe Routes program to not pick her brain immediately upon meeting her. So I appreciate you for all your good advice on that. So from a business perspective, I think most people think of business wanting walkable communities because people are walking to their stores. But there's a larger issue for employers, which is a healthy workforce is a productive workforce. It makes us competitive. And so my work primarily in dealing with large employers is that angle of I want my employees to walk, I want them to engage in physical activity because ultimately they're going to be healthier and they're going to lead to a more successful company. And so our conversation yesterday at the roundtable talked a lot about the importance of leadership as well as the grassroots movement. And it also talked about how do you make it easy for employees to engage in physical activity when they're at work. We spend, as adults, we spend an enormous amount of time in the office, or an office is being redefined, whether you're working from home or not, but you're working. And so how do we create that culture so that when you have this captive audience of employees, to really engage them in activity, whether it be walking meetings, whether it's breaks during meetings, looking at ways in which the employee who is at the office a large quantity of their waking hours is able to walk.
All right, thank you, Karen. Now we're going to do a walking meeting later today. I bet you're going to be ready for that after all this sitting.